Welcome to free training part 2 of Network Configuration Manager. Today, we'll be learning about the topics of configlets, compliance, role-based access control, and reports. This is the agenda for today's session. We'll be learning about configlets and their uses, compliance, role-based access control, schedules, reports, as well as about the various integrations supported by NCM. Let's start with our first topic, configlets. What are configlets? Configlets are executable configuration templates or executable script templates which can be used to push commands to multiple devices for bulk execution or troubleshooting purposes. What are these configlets used for? Configlets are mainly used for troubleshooting of faulty devices and to push new configurations or change configurations of multiple devices. Let's say, for example, a user wants to enable SNMP v3 or configure SNMP v3 to certain number of devices. The user cannot be logging into PuTTY or Telnet each time for a device to configure or enable SNMP v3. So this will be really hectic and near to impossible in a huge network environment, which contains about more than 1,000 devices. The user can instead use configlets and enable or configure SNMP v3 to any number of devices with a single click. This saves a lot of time as well as reduces the hectic manual work. How do we add these configlets? There are three execution modes present through which we add and execute configlets, which are script execution mode, advanced script execution mode, and file transfer mode. In the upcoming slides, we look in detail at these three execution modes one by one. First mode is the script execution mode. Here, commands are executed in a sequential order for the devices present. It is used for simple commands such as to enable or disable SNMP to multiple devices or for importing banners to multiple devices. This is an example of a script execution mode command. As you can see, on your left in black is the PuTTY and on the right is the configlet content area provided in the Network Configuration Manager. Now let me show you how this works in the UI of Network Configuration Manager. So this is the UI of Network Configuration Manager. Right now, we are in the inventory screen, which lists all the devices present in Network Configuration Manager. Go to Config Automation and click on Configlets. You can see Network Configuration Manager supports both CLI configlets as well as REST configlets. In REST configlets, we support some of the vendors such as Arista, Pan OS, HP, Aruba, Palo Alto, etc. We are also working on supporting other vendors as well. Now coming to CLI configlets, first let us see how you can add configlets from scratch. Then we look at the examples of the three execution modes one by one. To add configlets from scratch, click on the plus symbol provided here. Here, you can provide a name for this particular configlet. You can choose any one of the three execution modes, which are script execution mode, advanced script execution mode, and file transfer mode. Here you can select the vendor, whether you want all the vendors present in Network Configuration Manager or any one of the particular vendors of your choice. You can provide a short description for what purpose this particular configlet is going to be executed. Here in the configlet content area, you can enter the commands required for this particular configlet's execution. Here you can tick on this box if you want Network Configuration Manager to perform backup before and after the execution of this particular template. Click on Save. After clicking on Save, the particular configlet will be saved and will be shown as seen here. From here, you can either choose to execute it immediately, schedule it according to your date and time, or delete it completely. So let me show you an example of script execution mode configlet. This is an example of a script execution mode configlet. As you can see, there's a name provided for this particular configlet. The execution mode is given as script execution mode. The selected vendor is Alexela, and a short description is provided for what purpose this particular configlet is executed. So here the purpose is to forward syslog messages to syslog server, which are applicable for Alexela 5400 devices. Here, as you can see in the configlet content area, a single line of command is provided for the execution of this particular configlet. Here, this box is ticked, which means Network Configuration Manager will perform backup before and after the execution of this particular template. And click on Save. After clicking on Save, as I mentioned before, it will be saved, and you can perform 3 operations, whether you can execute it immediately, schedule it according to your choice, or delete it. First, let me show you how you can execute it immediately. To execute immediately, click on the execute button. Check whether the configlet name, execution mode, vendor are correct. The next option is to choose the template variables. Whether if all the devices have the same value, you can check on this radio button and provide this syslog IP facility level, event level, and proceed to the device selection. If the devices have, if each device has different values, then you can click on this particular radio button and you can import a CSV file according to the format given here. And you can proceed to the execution of this particular configlet. Let me give it a same value for all devices. The next option is to choose the devices, whether you can choose it either as a device group or as individual devices. If you want device group, you can select whether all device groups present in Network Configuration Manager or any particular device groups of your choice. If not, you can click on the devices tab and you can select the individual devices, whichever for which devices this particular configlet needs to be executed. You can just click on the devices required and press the right arrow. Click on the right arrow. So only for these selected devices, this particular configlet will be executed. You can check on this click on this box for the execution of backup. Click on execute. As soon as you click on execute, this particular configlet will be executed to the selected devices immediately. This is about script execution mode. Next one is the advanced script execution mode. So there are certain criteria for which advanced script execution mode is used, such as for prompt changes after command execution, such as for user confirmation commands, which involves yes or no, or to stop command execution in case of error in the middle, or to extend the timeout for a particular command, etc. For these particular area, advanced script execution mode configlet can be used. This is the example of advanced script execution mode command. As you can see, on your left is the putty and on the right is the configlet content area provided in the Network Configuration Manager's UI. So let me show you an example of advanced script execution mode configlet in the UI. This is an example of an advanced script execution mode configlet. As you can see, a name is provided for this particular configlet. The execution mode is given as advanced script execution mode. The vendor is selected as Cisco, and a short description is provided for what purpose this particular configlet is executed. Here, the main purpose is to backup iOS image from Catalyst 2900. Here you can see there are 3 lines of command present for this particular configlet. So this 3 lines of command will help to backup iOS image from Catalyst 2900 devices. So this box is ticked, which means Network Configuration Manager will perform backup before and after the execution of this particular template. And click on save. Clicking on save, the same procedure follows. You can choose to execute it, schedule it, or delete it. As I mentioned, execute option in the previous example. Let me show you how schedule option works in this example. So if you want to schedule it, click on the schedule button. You can provide a schedule name, choose the schedule type of as configlets. View whether the selected vendor, the selected configlet, and the execution mode are correct. Next, you can choose the report file type. So why this option is provided is that whenever Network Configuration Manager performs a schedule operation, it generates a report. So you can select in which format you want that particular report to be generated. Whether you want it in a PDF format, a CSV format, or a text format. You can select any one of the options here. So let me give it as PDF option. The next one is the template variable selection. As mentioned before, if all the devices have the same value, you can click on this radio button. If each device has different value, you can check on this radio button and you can import a CSV file. This is the selection of devices. You can either choose to select device groups or individual devices according to your choice. Next one is the report notification option. So as I mentioned before, Network Configuration Manager will generate report after every scheduled operations. So you can Select the send email radio button and you can provide multiple email addresses separated by comma in this field and a short email subject. So what network configuration manager will do is that after this particular configlet is executed at the given date and time, it will immediately generate a report according to the format chosen by you, and it will send to the email addresses given in this field. So where this is helpful is that if you are away from network configuration manager, you can be up to date with the updates running in network configuration manager with this type of reports. Suppose if you don't want the network configuration manager to generate a report and send it via email, you can click on the save report option, which is used to save report internally in network configuration manager. So the next time when you log into network configuration manager, you can click on the reports section and you can view the particular Configlets history. This is all about report notification and report generation. Next one is the type of schedule. So NCM provides around 5 options for you to schedule, which is hourly scheduling, daily scheduling, weekly scheduling, monthly scheduling, as well as schedule just once. You can provide the exact date and time, including the hours and minutes, and you can click on save. After clicking on save, this particular configlet will be executed only at the particular given date and time. This is about advanced script execution mode as well as how scheduling works in network configuration manager. Now let's move on to our next option, which is the file transfer mode. Here, an entire configuration, startup, running, or both can be pushed to selected devices. You can copy an entire configuration and paste it in the configlet content area and execute it. So let me show you an example of file transfer mode here. UI. This is an example of a file transfer mode configlet. As you can see, the name is provided, the execution mode is selected as file transfer mode, and the vendor is selected as all, which means all this particular configlet will be executed to all the devices present in network configuration manager. Here, a short description is provided for what purpose this particular configlet is executed. So here the purpose is to upload configurations to selected devices. So as you can see here, an entire configuration has been pasted here. So this particular configuration, which is given in the configlet content area, will be executed to all the devices that are currently present in network configuration manager in minutes. So you can check on this box if you want NCM to perform backup operation, and you can click on save. So after clicking on save, the same procedure follows. You can choose to execute it, schedule it, or delete it. If you don't want this particular configlet at all, you can choose to delete it by clicking the bin icon here. So this is about configlets and their execution and their purposes in network configuration manager. Let's move on to our next topic of today, which is compliance. So why do you need compliance, or why do you have to be compliant? So it is necessary because you can avoid any vulnerabilities and loopholes to your network environment. Compliance is also mandatory, and not following will lead to legal consequences. Some of the default policies in network configuration manager include Cisco iOS policy, HIPAA policy, SOX policy, PCI policy. So you can also create your own policies depending upon your needs. For creating a custom policy, first you need to create a custom rule, then group those rules into rule groups, and then those rule groups are associated as policies. After a policy is created and applied to devices, NCM runs a compliance check to check if the policies given are mandated with the devices. If not, a violation is triggered. There are two ways to create your custom rule. Either you can clone an existing rule or add one from scratch. There are 3 criteria to add a compliance rule from scratch. They are simple criteria, advanced criteria, and advanced custom criteria. In the upcoming slides, we'll look in detail about these 3 criteria. First criteria is the simple criteria. Here during NCM's compliance check, you can select either what all should contain, what all shouldn't contain, whether it should be an exact set or not an exact set. You can choose any one of these conditions. You can also select the number of times it must be present in the configuration. So let me show you an example of simple criteria in the UI. On compliance, as you can see, these are the currently present compliance policies in Network Configuration Manager. So to create a custom rule, click on Rules tab. As you can see, these are the currently present rules in Network Configuration Manager. To create a rule from scratch, click on the plus symbol provided here. As you can see, there are three options provided for you to choose from. You can select either simple criteria, advanced criteria, and advanced custom criteria according to your usage, and you can create this particular rule. So this will be better understood if I show you examples of each and every criteria. So let's start with the simple criteria example. So this is an example of a simple criteria compliance rule. So as I mentioned before, there are four conditions for you to choose from, which are should contain all lines, should not contain any line, should contain exact set, or should not contain any exact set. So here it is chosen as should not contain any line. Here you can select any, it is selected as any number of times it must be present. You can also choose exact number of times it must be present. As you can see, there are two lines of commands present. So how this works is that whenever NCM checks for compliance rule and it runs through the configuration of the devices, it will check whether these two lines are present or not. So since here it is given as these two lines should not be present in the device's configuration, so it should not be present. Suppose if these two lines are present, that means the rule is violated and will throw a non-compliance error. Suppose these two lines are not present, it means the rule is not getting violated and it will be compliant. After providing the line, you can click on next. Here you can provide the rule name, a short description about the rule. You can select the violation severity, whether it is a critical, major, or warning. Here you can provide the remediation description as well as a remediation configlet. So what is this remediation template or remediation configlet? When NCM runs a compliance check and there is a violation, you can execute this remediation configlet then and there and resolve any issue with the compliance rule. So hence, let me show you how you can execute this particular remediation configlet when there is a rule error. Compliance. To rule compliance. As you can see, there is a remediation template here. So suppose if there is a rule violation, you can click on this particular remediation template and you can execute it immediately. So hence it is always necessary to add a remediation configlet while creating a rule from scratch so that it will be helpful when a rule is violated. This is about compliance rule and script execution. Simple criteria example. Let's move on to our next option, which is advanced criteria. So here you can give any regular expressions along with the conditions such as what should be contained and not contained. It also provides an and or feature, which means you can provide multiple conditions, separating it with the and or option. So let's see an example of this in the UI. Rules, click on. So this is an example of an advanced criteria compliance rule. So as you can see, there are two conditions for you to choose from, which are should contain and should not contain. Here it is given as should contain, and a regular expression pattern is provided here. And the number of times it must be present is given over here, which is given as any number of times it can be present. So what this means is that whenever NCM runs a compliance check and goes through the device's configuration, it will check whether this particular regular expression pattern is contained or not. Since the rule is given as should contain this particular regular expression pattern, it must be present. Otherwise, NCM will deem this particular rule as it has been violated and it is non-compliant. Suppose this particular pattern is contained in the device's configuration, which means it is not violating any for any rules, and it becomes compliant. After giving the condition as well as a pattern, you can click on next. The same procedure follows. You can give the rule name, description, choose the violation severity, remediation description, as well as a remediation configlet. So I'll repeat myself again. It is always important and useful if you select a remediation configlet when you're creating a rule from scratch. This is a advanced criteria example. Let's move on to our next one, which is advanced custom criteria. Here, you can provide start and end of a block, additional block criteria, along with the conditions should contain, shouldn't contain. So this is a mixture of advanced custom criteria as well as advanced criteria. So let's have a look at an example of advanced custom criteria in the UI. So this is an example of an advanced custom criteria. As you can see, a configuration block start is given, which is given as interface. A configuration block end is provided, which is given as an exclamatory mark. And an additional block criteria is given. This is optional. If you don't want this, you can click on none and you can proceed. But it is always helpful if you give a additional block criteria. So here it is given as should not contain shutdown. So let me explain to you how advanced custom criteria works. So whenever the NCM runs a compliance checks and goes through the device's configuration, it will check whether the configuration block starts with interface and whether the configuration block ends with an exclamatory mark. As you can see from this presentation example, the configuration block starts from interface and it ends with an exclamatory mark, which means these two conditions are satisfied. And it moves to the next one, which is the additional block criteria. It is given as should not contain shutdown. So why particularly shutdown? Because in certain network environment, some of the devices interface will be shut down, and it will be and it is not necessary to run compliance check on these devices. Hence, to avoid this, you can provide this option as an additional block criteria. So as you can see from this example, here a shutdown option is present in the configuration block. So what this means is that this particular device's interface is in shutdown mode, and NCM will not run any compliance check for this device, and it will move on to the next device. Suppose there is no shutdown option in the configuration, which means the device is in running state, and it will continue with the compliance check process for this particular device. Then after these conditions are satisfied, it will move on to the next set of conditions, which are advanced criteria conditions, which are should contain, should not contain this particular regular expression pattern given any number of times or any particular number of times. So after this is also validated, CM will that this particular compliance rule is not violated and it is compliant. Suppose any one of these conditions fail, NCM will deem it as rule violation and it will turn to be a non-compliant device. You can click on next. You can provide the rule name, description, violation severity, remediation description, as well as remediation configlet, and click on save. This is all about compliance and the three types of criteria which are present for compliance creation. Now let me show you how you can group these rules into rule groups. Select whichever rules you want, and you can click on this hamburger icon present over here and click on associate to rule groups. As you can see, these are the rules selected. If you want to select any more rules, you can select by clicking on the rule and clicking the right icon. These are the rule groups that are currently present in Network Configuration Manager. You can select which rule groups, whichever rule groups you want this particular rules to be associated, and you can click on save. After clicking on save, these particular rules will be associated to these two rule groups. Is to group those rule groups into policies. So you can click on any of the rule groups you want, click on the hamburger icon again and click on associate to policies. So as you can select, as you can see here, this particular, these are the selected rule groups over here. You can select more rule groups if you want. And these are the currently available policies in Network Configuration Manager. You can select whichever policy you want this particular rule group to be associated with, and you can click on save. After clicking on save, these particular rule groups containing the embedded rules within them will be associated to the selected policies. You can also create policies from scratch by going to policy tab and clicking the plus symbol provided over here. So you can provide a policy name, a short description, configuration type, whether it's running or startup configuration, policy violation criteria, whether any rule in this policy is violated or only if a critical or major rule in policy is violated, and you can select the rule groups. After the next procedure is to select the device group or individual devices. You can, if you want all device groups, you can select this option. If you want to select individual devices also, you can do that by clicking the individual devices and clicking the right arrow and clicking on save. After clicking on save, this particular policy will be created and it will be associated to the selected device groups as well as the individual devices. This is all about compliance and network configuration manager. Next one is compliance report. So compliance reports provide in-depth information about what all devices are compliant and non-compliant along with the date and time of the last check. So let me show you an example in the UI. Reports, compliance report. As you can see, there's a pie chart provided which gives you the information whether what all devices, how many devices are with violations and how many devices are compliant and how many devices for which the data are not available. So as you can see below, there's a host name provided along with the violation severity, whether it's critical, major, warning, and how many are compliant along with the last check date and time, which in with many seconds. So you can further drill down this particular host name, and you can find which policy name and its compliance status along with the violation severity. So this particular report can also be toggled by choosing the option as such as all device groups or any particular device groups is compliance report. Also, you can export this particular report via PDF, a CSV file, or even via email. So this is all about compliance reports. Let's move on to our next topic of the session, which is role-based access control. So what is this role-based access control? Now let's say there's a network team having a senior admin as well as some operators. Under a senior admin, there'll be some operators working. You can assign specific roles or specific devices to them. Only the roles and devices given to them will be accessible by them. Others will be out of range for them or out of access. If they make any changes to their assigned devices, the admin will receive notifications immediately. The admin can either accept or reject the change. Let me show you the cycle of role-based access control in Network Configuration Manager via diagrammatic representation. Let's say, for example, there is an operator. He makes a change to a configuration file. As soon as he makes a change, it will be immediately sent to the admin with a notification. The admin can choose to approve or reject the change. After an admin approves or rejects the change, it will be sent as a notification to the operator who made the change. So you can check whether the change made was approved or rejected. So this is the cycle of role-based access control. So let me show you this in the UI. Settings, user management. As you can see, these are the currently present users in Network Configuration Manager. Let's say, for example, there is an operator named Aaron in your network environment, and you need to add him to your NCM user management database. So you can do so by clicking the add user option. You can provide the role for him as operator. You can select the local authentication or else any of the other authentication levels, which are ADS authentication or AD authentication. You can provide the name. A short email ID of him. Let me give a dummy email ID. You can provide a password. You can provide the phone number, mobile number, which are optional, and you can select the time zone and click on next. After clicking on next, here you can either choose to give him a specific device or a particular device group. Let me give him Cisco router group 1 and click on save. So how this works is that only for this person, Aaron, only the Cisco router group 1 will be accessible and the other devices will be out of access for it. So this will be better understood if I log in as Aaron and show you. So after clicking on save, as you can see here, the particular user is added, and you can view the access control authentication when the password was changed, current login, previous login, as well as the actions. If you don't want him, you can delete it from here. So let me log out from my screen and log in as Aaron and show you. And provide select the option as local authentication, and you can log in. This is the screen of the operator Aaron. As you can see here, only the Cisco iOS router and Cisco modular access router are present for him to be accessed, and other routers and vendors are not accessible by him. Suppose he goes and he makes some changes to this particular device, running configuration, let's say provide a draft name, and he makes some changes. Let me give some dummy changes. Click on save and upload. After clicking on save and upload, as you can see from here, configuration upload is not supported. To upload configuration, make sure the vertical. So this is given because this is a demo version. And as soon as this particular save and upload option is given, this particular change will be sent to the administrator for review. Let me show you where this particular notification will come. Let me log in as myself. So here, here in this area, you will receive the notification such that the particular operator has requested for a change. You can go inside this and you can view the particular changes, and you can choose to approve or reject it. As soon as you give approve or reject this, but the notification will be sent to the operator, and he will know why this particular is approved or rejected. This is all about role-based access control. Move on to our next one, which is schedules. NCM provides different types of scheduling options for different task categories, such as for configuration backups, report generation, compliance check, configlet execution, etc. So you can select any one of these schedule types, and you can perform the schedule operations according to your need. So let me show you an example in the UI. Go to config automation and click on schedule. So these are the currently present schedules in network configuration manager. To create a to create a custom schedule, click on the plus symbol provided here. So here you can provide a schedule name. Choose any of the config schedule type you want, whether configuration backup, report generation, compliance check, or etc. Let me give it as configuration backup. Then you can select either a device group or individual devices for which this particular scheduling is done. And you can choose this option, as I mentioned before, to receive email notification of the report, or you can choose this option to save the report internally. And you can select which suits you best, whether hourly scheduling, daily, weekly, monthly, or once, and you can click on save. After clicking on save, this particular schedule will be given exact date and time. So this is about schedules. We have configuration search. So this configuration search can be used to locate a particular string, a word, or anything in a configuration file. Let's say if we have a large configuration file of more than 1,000 lines in it, the user cannot be scrolling and searching each of those 1,000 lines for a particular keyword. Instead, the user can use configuration search and find anything instantly. Now let's see an example of this in the UI. Go to inventory. Click on this icon over here, which is a file icon along with a magnifying glass. You can have a default search option, which is basically a simple search, or else you can click on the advanced option, and you can select any one of the conditions provided here, such as contains, not contains, line starts with, and line ends with. So let me give it as line contains public. You can also add any number of lines you want by clicking the plus symbol. And also you can choose and or option. Let me give it as and click on search. So as soon as you click on search, NCM will check which device this particular lines are present, and it will list over here. You can select whichever line, whichever you want, and you can view that particular line where it is present. This is all about configuration search. We have exclude criteria. So what is this exclude criteria? So with this feature, you can tell NCM to exclude certain things from being considered as a change and triggering an alarm for it. For example, if you don't want clock time to be considered as a change, you can provide that criteria for the required device. After this, NCM will not generate alarms or any type of notification. The clock time of the mentioned devices has been changed. So NCM provides two options, which is line exclude as well as block exclude. In line exclude, you can provide a certain function such as clock time to be excluded. In block exclude, you can exclude by providing start and end block of configurations. Let me show you an example in the UI. Config automation and click on exclude criteria. As you can see, there are two options provided. One is line exclude and block exclude. So let me give you an example of the clock time, as I mentioned before. As you can see here, the device type is Cisco 300 series switch. The criteria is given as clock time, and some of these supported templates are given as well. So after you click on save, for this particular device type and the supported templates, clock time will not be considered as a change, and NCM will not generate any notifications or alarms for it in the future. So where this feature is helpful is that it will avoid any junk notifications or any unnecessary notifications that keep on occurring. You can avoid that by using exclude criteria. The next one is alarms. So alarms are used to notify important updates and failures immediately to users. So alarms in NCM are used for some major failures such as backup failures, change management failures, etc. So this alarms pops up in all these screens in Network Configuration Manager whenever there is a critical failure. So let me show you an example in the UI. Click on alarms. As you can see, these are the currently present alarms in Network Configuration Manager. There are about 489 active alarms currently in Network Configuration Manager. You can also group these alarms into 4 different types, such as critical alarms, trouble alarms, attention alarms, as well as service down alarms. As you can see here, these are the currently present alarms which have been raised for backup failures, change management failures, etc. Suppose if there is a critical alarm raised, you can know that this particular thing is very severe, and you can immediately solve it without any delay. This is all about alarms in Network Configuration Manager. Next, we have show commands. So instead of typing commands manually by connecting to a terminal and executing them, you can save those commands and execute them from the device itself automatically. So this basically works as a command template. So let me show you this in the UI. To settings, device management, show commands. These are the currently present show commands created. To create a new one, click on the add button. You can provide the command alias, command, as well as for which vendor this particular commands are needed, and you can click on save. After clicking on save, it will be like this. Let me show you. Actions, execute, show command. So as you can see here, show version command, NCM provides the version of this particular Cisco iOS router. There are also other show commands created, such as show interfaces, such as it shows the interface of this particular Cisco iOS router, show access list, show login, show IP traffic, show buffer, show hardware, etc. So this is really helpful to you, so that you can use it wherever you require for whichever devices are of utmost important to you. So this avoids the reason to log into a command prompt or telnet, and you need to enter the particular commands. So this acts like a command template. This is all about show command. We have reports. So NCM provides different kinds of reports and audits for various purposes. You can see from the screen, there are about 4 categories of reports which have subcategories in them, such as network reports have hardware inventory report, firmware inventory, device inventory, network health status, etc. Configuration reports have startup, running config, configuration changes, configuration change trend, etc. So let me show you this in the UI. Go to reports. As you can see, these are the currently present reports in Network Configuration Manager. Let me show you an example of hardware inventory report. So here it provides the IP address, device type, image, file type, series and model, OS type and OS version, some of the general properties, chassis details, inventory details, interface details. So all these details will be present here for a particular device. You can also toggle this by choosing all device groups option or any particular device group. You can also export this particular report via various mediums such as to PDFs, to CSV, to Excel, or you can also send it via email. So this is an example of reports in Network Configuration Manager. Next, we have the UI of Network Configuration Manager. So NCM provides a top-notch informative dashboard, which provides a bird's eye view of all the operations running currently in NCM. So this dashboard is in widget type and it is completely customizable according to your choice. So NCM also provides the option to create dynamic device groups based on the vendor. It also provides user-specific retainable filters and columns, and it is a real-time UI. Let me show you the real UI. So here you can click on dashboard. As you can see, these are the currently running operations in Network Configuration Manager. So you can view all the operations under one screen, which will be really helpful for you. Instead of going inside a specific task and viewing that task, you can use this option. You can also have a better insight of the processes running in your organization. Suppose if you want these types of, you wanted to arrange it according to your choice, you can do so by just clicking and dragging it wherever you want and click on save. After clicking on save, this particular dashboard will be saved, and from the next time you log in, it will be shown as selected by you. So this is one of the advantages of Network Configuration Manager's UI. We have integrations. NCM not only provides in-house integrations, it also supports many third-party integrations as well. First, let us see about integration with OPM. So what is this OPM? OPM is a highly integrated network monitoring solution that helps gain visibility, monitor, and manage your network devices. Suppose if you have Op Manager, you can easily integrate Network Configuration Manager with it in the same UI, so that you will get the double advantage of performing monitoring as well as managing configurations. This integration with NetFlow Analyzer. NetFlow Analyzer is a bandwidth monitoring and traffic analysis software. If you have NFA, you can integrate NCM with it easily under the same UI, so that you will have the double advantage of managing bandwidth as well as managing configurations. These are some of the other third-party integrations that are currently supported by Network Configuration Manager, which are Password Manager Pro, Service Desk Plus, Service Desk Plus Cloud, as well as ServiceNow. So Password Manager Pro is a credential wall storage. So if there are a lot of devices in a network environment, the user cannot be remembering credentials for every device. They can instead use Password Manager Pro and save the credentials in them. When required, they can retrieve and use them easily. The user can also change credentials for multiple devices in NCM with Password Manager Pro. Next is Service Desk Plus, which is a ticketing software. So whenever there's a backup failure or there's a configuration upload request from an operator, it will be raised as tickets in STP automatically. The user can directly view the alerts as tickets and take action accordingly. Next, ServiceNow is an instant logging software which provides bidirectional data synchronization for device discovery and real-time alert management. So these are some of the third-party integrations supported. We are also working to support other integrations as well. Thank you all.